You're on.
So, it's my great pleasure to introduce to you today a guy who's been a great friend to this church from the onset, from the beginning. He was actually one of the very first speakers to come and speak. And I will never forget his opening arms and his support at the beginning, and has been a friend ever since then, to me personally and to this church. And he is a bright light. He's a bright light in the world, and a couple things I want to share with you. That he has a mission always in his life, and that is to bring out the very best in each and every one of us, so that each and every one of us may bring our very best to the world. He's been the senior minister of two churches in the Portland metropolitan area since 1983. He's an executive coach specializing in communication skills. He's a writer, a musician, and in the process right now of producing. Will this be your first instrumental CD?
Yes, it will.
Yeah, that's what I thought. His first instrumental CD to be released in 2011. So please help me in welcoming this bright light to our stage, Reverend Richard Kent Matthews.
Your mother asked me to suggest this to you.
Oh, she did.
Now everybody turn your heads, because I'm going to spritz. This is a singer's spray. Have you seen those before? Okay.
I know people use it.
I have a question for everybody, right off the bat. Let's get this going and let's get spirited. How many of you have ever experienced scarcity mentality? I better see every hand in the room going. Right? Scarcity mentality. And how many of you have ever been to a workshop or a Sunday message or listened to Reverend Barry or anybody else who said, if you can just overcome this scarcity mentality, abundance is yours? Ever heard that? How many of you believe it? What? Well, where are the hands now? Okay? Okay, let me share something with you about scarcity mentality. We often hear that produced from these speakers and these teachers in a somewhat negative tone, do we not? If you can just overcome scarcity thinking, abundance is just around the corner. Well, let me share something with you here. When I was getting ready to do this message, I always like to start off with some kind of a quote so it'll make me sound very authoritative, right? Some kind of quote. And I was looking for a quote to start this out, and you know how Spirit works. This just dropped right into my lap. There's a wonderful book. It's on marketing. It's not even a spiritual book. It's called Free by Chris Anderson. Has anybody read that book? A few of you in here know that book. Okay. Well, I just picked it up off the bookshelf because I... Ooh, Freudian slip there. Okay. I picked it up off the bookshelf and opened it, and this quote landed right in my face. Has that ever happened to anybody?
Yes.
When you're looking for something and you're not quite sure where to go, and all of a sudden it just kind of shows up in your experience, right? Well, listen to this quote. This is from Chris Anderson from the book Free. Our brains are wired for scarcity. We are focused on the things we don't have enough of, from time to money. That's what gives us our drive. If we get what we're seeking, we tend to quickly discount it and find a new scarcity to pursue. We are motivated by what we don't have, not by what we do have. Does that make sense? Okay, all of a sudden scarcity takes on an entirely different connotation, doesn't it? Doesn't it? Okay, did you know that it was scarcity thinking that brought you all here today? That got you into the seats. Why? Because you're looking for something better, something different, something new, something interesting. Bestville. Exactly. He asked me this morning if this was going to tie in with what he had to say. Do you think? You think it ties in? Okay. Well, now that we've got that, put that aside for a second. We're going to come back to scarcity mentality in a moment, but I'm going to ask you another question. You know, each one of us has gone through an experience, the most dangerous experience we will ever experience in our existence on this planet. How many of you think you know what that experience is? You think it's birth? How many say birth? Okay? Wrong. The most dangerous situation you will ever find yourself in during the course of this experience on this planet,
The drive here.
besides that, is your own conception. Let me tell you something about conception. How many in here are mothers? How many of you in here are fathers? Okay? Okay, so you've all had a little bit of experience with this, right? You know how it begins, so you don't have to go into all those details. And you kind of know what the outcome will eventually be if everything works out okay. But let me go back to that first moment. There is a moment when the mommy cell, the egg, will make a decision. Because you know your mother chooses you. Did you know that? Are you aware of that? That there's all these daddy cells swimming in the right direction, all just swimming their way toward this egg. And there's this shell on the outside that will not let any of these guys in unless the egg, in some chemical way, spots the right one. And if that right one gets close enough, she'll let this right one penetrate the outer layer. In it will come, the DNA will mingle, and this new being will begin. And unless it's that specific male cell, you wouldn't have been here. Your name was literally written on that male cell. The only one in 300 million that could have possibly produced you. Now, in that particular experience is the most dangerous position you'll ever be in, because did you know that for every conception that takes place, 1 million don't make it? Conception is a very dangerous moment. It's a moment of decision for both the egg and the sperm. And most attempts do not succeed. They just don't. So, if you made it through that, and you obviously have, or you wouldn't be sitting in this room, you have passed the first and the most major hurdle you'll ever have to go through in your experience as a human being on this planet. The most deadly experience that will happen after that is death itself. Everything else in between, no matter how rough it is, no matter how tough it's been for you, will never compare to that moment. Because your life was literally in the balance right there. Okay, so you got through conception because you're sitting here, right? You've made it. Now the next thing after you get past that is gestation. Everybody familiar with that word, or do I have to pull out my Wikipedia definition here? Okay, gestation, which means you go through this whole process of growing. First you got to attach to the uterine wall and do all those kinds of things, which are dangerous in themselves. All during this process, you're in the position of dying. All during that. Now, the minute you get in there and you grab onto your mother's womb, the mother's immune system immediately